Now we're down to the wire. I'm the last one. I always do it that way. I like to sit down. I guess I'm lazy.
I don't blame you.
But I've been doing these too many years, and I just like to sit down instead of standing up at a podium. Okay. A lot of you know about my work. That's why I was just going to kind of do a general overview and let people ask questions. But I think I do want to give a background for those of my work in the UFO, for those who don't know about me. One thing to me I think is fascinating is I started out 45 years ago with hypnosis in the 1960s, and I've been working with the UFO field since 80s. And I can see the things that I was finding out then and writing in my books about, people were laughing at, and they were very skeptics saying, oh, this is crazy, it's impossible. Now, when you hear these other speakers, it is being accepted as fact now. They're even going back and saying the scientists are backing all the things I was saying back then. So I've been able to see it evolve to where nobody believed in any of these things. You know, the main theories that when I first wrote about the seeding of the planet Earth and how the genetics and the genes have been manipulated and the DNA had been is being raised. All of that stuff they thought was crazy. What do you mean that the ETs created us? But now it's all being accepted by the people in this field. So I've been able to see that happen. Of what at one time I was being left at is now things are really changing. Okay. But that makes me feel good to know that no longer am I kind of out there on the fringe. Well, I got into hypnosis. It was 45 years ago in the 1960s. In those days, the only thing you used hypnosis for was habits. Stop smoking, lose weight. There was no such thing as past life regression. Very few people in the Western world knew anything about reincarnation. None of that. If you would have mentioned past lives, and that's where I started out, they were saying you were working with the devil. And when they found out what I was doing, when I got into past life regressions by accident, they said I was holding seances and speaking to the dead. So that's the mindset that was going on when I began. So I went through a very hard time of that. But because the hypnosis was done very simply back in those days, I had to invent my own technique. And that's why my hypnosis technique is not like any other technique out there. There's nobody to tell me what you had to do because nobody knew anything about past life regression, and that's where I began. So I had to figure it out on my own. And then as time has gone on, I'm going to get up into when I got into UFO investigations. But it was all past life regression in the beginning. And most of your hypnotists are taught by the old methods because they were taught by somebody who was taught by somebody who was taught by somebody. And they'll say, this is the way you do it. You don't make any changes. You have to stick to exactly the way they're taught. Well, I didn't go through that. So that's why mine is different. They are taught to keep the client in the lightest possible level of trance. This is where the problem comes in when you get into UFO research, because that conscious mind and the fear and the emotions is very present. It's right there. You don't want that. But when I work, and what I discovered in my work, I work in the deepest possible level of trance, called the somnambulistic level. At that level, we're able to remove the conscious mind altogether, put it out of the picture so it cannot interfere. And you get a much clearer story. You don't have all that emotion in there that's saying, well, this is silly, it didn't happen, and you don't have all that fear. Now, I'm going to get into how I got my information with UFOs, but we were able to speak directly to the ETs. And this is all in my book, The Custodians, when I first began. And they said the average person, they are interacting constantly with people. And the average case, they don't want the person to remember anything because they don't want to interfere with your normal life. They want you to continue on your life because they are really the observers, they're the watchers, and they're just watching us make fools of ourselves, you know. They've been doing it since the beginning of the world. But so they don't want to interfere, they want you to go on with your life. So if you do have an experience, they don't want you to remember it. But they said they have no control over the way the chemistry of the brain is working now. The pollutants in the air, the additives to the food, if you are on any kind of alcohol, if you're taking any kind of drugs, recreational or medicinal, all of these interfere with the chemistry of the brain. So if the person has an experience, they will remember it distorted through the chemistry of the brain. And they will remember it with the fear and horror that really is not there, because this is the way the human mind works. And it's remembering it through these chemical imbalances that are happening in our brain. So that's why I found a way to bypass all of that and get to the real part of the mind that has the memory. And I have worked with other cases that other investigators have done. Bud Hopkins was a friend of mine, but he was terrified of this work. And he really thought everything was evil and bad and all of that. But he was terrified of going into the somnambulistic level too. He said, no, I'm never going to go there. He said, what I'm finding is bad enough. I don't want to find more. Because he thought it would all be worse. Anyway, I have worked with cases that he did. And when I did the case, we found a totally different story. And the person afterwards would say, well, if that's what happened, I can live with that. Because some of these people were afraid to even go out their front door because they multiplied and focused on the fear and the emotion. Now that's the human part, but I found a way to get around that, especially when we got them on board the craft, to where they wouldn't react in that way and you could get the true story. That's the difference in what I have found and what the other investigators are finding. They keep them in the light level. So I began my work with the past life regression, and that's why I've got so much results with my books. I've written 17 books. People come up to me and said, I read all your books. I said, all 17? I didn't know there were 17. They're thinking the Convoluted Universe books are my only ones. Those are the latest ones that I've done. But I started writing the books in the 1980s. Took me 9 years to get my first book published because I had to wait for the rest of the world to catch up with me. It was all, what do you mean reincarnation, past lives? They had to know what this was about. So it took me a long time, and then even when I got in there, we ran up against these skeptics that saying, I don't believe in what you're writing about. So I was mostly involved with the past life regressions, and I had 5 books out by the time Lou Farish came into my life. And, you know, Lou Farish is the one who started this whole thing. He was a wonderful, wonderful friend. And he began talking to me about the UFO phenomena. Well, I always believed there were UFOs, but I was not into that type of investigation. And he took me to meetings. And there was MUFON meetings. There were different meetings where the investigators were meeting and discussing all these cases. And I just kind of sat in a corner and listened because I didn't know anything about the cases and the background and the mechanics of the UFO phenomena. So he got me interested. And one time, well, he even brought me the book, remember Whitley Strieber's Communion? Had come out, and he said, you need to read this book. This shows what they're doing with hypnosis. And So the one time he said, you know, we're having people that think they've been abducted, but there's nobody in Arkansas who can do this kind of work. He said a lot of them, psychologists had tried hypnosis on them, and they'd get them into the scene, they would be on board the craft, and then suddenly the psychologist would just wake them up. And they'd say, we don't know what to ask. We don't know how to handle this because it's not in the book. So that is not good therapy. That's worse therapy than not having any at all if you just jerk somebody out of a traumatic situation. So Lou called me and he said, we got to have somebody who can work with these people. And he said, you've been involved in the bazaar for so long, we don't think it'll frighten you. And I said, it won't frighten me, it just makes me curious. I just want to know more. So he asked me, he said, I want you to come to the meeting. They had biannual or monthly meetings. And there are going to be about 25 investigators there. We have a woman from Oklahoma who thinks she was abducted. We want you to do a hypnosis with her in front of all these investigators. Just see what happens. Not the ideal situation, what I call a goldfish bowl situation. You got all these people watching. I didn't know them, and this woman, I didn't know her. She didn't know any of this. Imagine the spot it put her on, to have to be there and be hypnotized in front of all of these people watching. Anyway, they didn't know that I had not done any UFO cases yet. That my technique was designed to take people into past lives. And I said, I'm going to have to change it to keep them in this lifetime. And I had no idea how I was going to do that. So I showed up, and I didn't tell them this was my first time to try it. But it worked beautifully. And she went back into the scene, and she was on board the ship and all of this. And I said, wow, this is interesting. It really does work. So after that, Lou and Jerry, I don't know if Jerry's still here or not. Jerry, did you go back, or are you still here? Did he leave? Okay. Jerry Blackburn, as I told you in the early days, it was Lou Farish and Ed Mazer, the ones that did the conference, but Jerry Blackburn was involved too. So they began to hear about people who had thought they'd had experiences. And they'd call me up and they said, well, you want to go and see this person? They didn't know anything about them. All they knew was their story that they'd heard. So we, the three of us, me and Lou and Jerry, would go to the person's house and have a session. Didn't know anything about them. So we had some fascinating things happen that nobody would be able to explain. I saw the human body do things that are impossible to do. Now I'm used to it because now my hypnosis is focused on the healing, and I see the body do things that are impossible for it to do when they put your body back together again and completely rebuild the body. But in those days, I was not prepared for that. So I want to tell you one case that we went on in the early days, and it was here in Arkansas. And this couple, back in the hills, kind of like Travis, you know, back there in Snowflake, Arizona, nobody knows anything about any of this stuff. And they were back in the hills, and they were living in a little house out in the middle of nowhere. And they'd had this strange experience, and they wanted us to come and investigate it. And we go to the house, they pull up, just a very simple house. And the mother-in-law is there, and she says, you want some peach cobbler? You know? It's that kind of an atmosphere, very down-home, basic. Well, the story we got, before I did the hypnosis, I wanted to do both the husband and the wife. They said that they had been in their truck driving back from church late at night, and they saw this huge light. Well, they pulled over to watch it, And the man gets out of the car. And his wife keeps hollering and screaming at him, get back in the car, get back in the car. And the thing is right over the truck, huge, it's bright light shining down on the truck. And he's standing next to the truck watching this thing. And she finally was screaming at him enough, she got him back into the truck and they went home. Now, I want you to see what you can figure out this is. The next day, his whole side was black where it had been burned. Under his ring, on this one side, was black where it had been burned. He had terrible headache, aches and pains in his joints, and then a day or so later, all his hair began to fall out. So what does that sound like to you? He was in a radiation field. The wife was in the truck. She was not affected. But he was standing outside the truck, and we figured out his side that was next to the truck probably reflected off, and that was where he got the burns from the metal on the truck, and the same with his ring. So the next few days, he began to experience radiation reactions. So they wanted to know what happened. So this is when I did the session with the man, and Jerry said later he wished we would have had a video camera, but I don't think the video camera could have picked it up. As we went through it, and he goes through the experience where they parked the truck and he gets out of it, and he's going through the whole thing, describing it. I saw the body, his body began to vibrate. Not shaking, that's too much. Vibrating. All of the skin, the hair, everything. And I was looking at it when I'm talking to him, and I'm thinking, it's moving. And I motioned to Jerry and Lou, and they came over, leaning right over him. They could see it. It was so slight that I don't think a camera could have picked it up. The hair, everything was vibrating. The whole body was vibrating. Now, you know you can't make your body do that. It's impossible. It was doing it. I think he was reliving being in that radiation field. So that's the kind of cases we were doing. And I've never written about a lot of this. We were making reports, and we were trying to turn them into MUFON. Now, no offense to the MUFON people that are in the audience now, but in those days, they wouldn't have anything to do with me. They had to be nuts and bolts science. You had to be able to see it, touch it, or dissect it, or it didn't exist. And with hypnosis, they didn't want anything to do with it. So a lot of these things they weren't interested in hearing. I did a lot of in-field investigations for them. I would go out and get soil samples where people thought something had landed. And so I was doing a lot with them, but they would not accept the hypnosis. Now I'm hearing that they're more open-minded. I hope they are. But in those days, I even did sessions in front of MUFON investigators, and they ridiculed. All during the session, they were ridiculing what I was doing. And so I said, I'm not going to ever do it again in front of investigators like that, because that's not fair to the subject, to the client. And I hope I'm not insulting those of you who are in MUFON now. You forgive me? Okay. Because that was the way it was in those days. And Lou and all of us, we had an uphill battle that they didn't believe it unless you had pictures or you had something, an object you could really feel. So anyway, I was doing all of this with Lou and Jerry. We were going investigating these cases. And then I began to find some other ones that I was working with on my own. And this is when the strange stuff began to happen. And it's in my books, but a lot of people wouldn't believe me, and I got a lot of criticism and snide remarks and everything. But as I began to work with the people who thought they were abducted, by using this deep method of hypnosis, they don't get into the emotion. I'd get them on board the craft, and they're crying, they're hysterical, they're scared. And then we get them into that level, it goes away. But the funny thing that began to happen was when I got them into that deep level, the ETs began speaking through the client. And this is not just once, these were hundreds of cases. And I thought, this is fascinating. But the first time it happened, they're describing, and they couldn't describe a lot of things that were going on. I wanted more information. And then I heard this mechanical voice said, "We are scanning, we are scanning." And I said, "Oh, okay, what's going on?" And I could feel a vibration going through my body. And they said, "All right, she's the one we're supposed to tell. What do you want to know?" I said, "You don't ask me what I want to know. I want to know everything." But they said, "Why give the information to just anybody? Give it to someone who will use it." And they knew I was going to write about it, and that's why they said, "What do you want to know? We will tell you the answer to anything you want to know." The key is asking the questions. You have to ask the right question. So I found a way after that, at every time I did a UFO case, they would come through. Every kind of species you could possibly imagine. It was very exciting. The first time it was the little grays, and they were very mechanical. That was how they sounded. And they explained the little grays are biological created entities. You can call them a robot if you want. They're not mechanical, they are biologically created. And they are created by the larger grays that are on the huge motherships. And you know, if we're going to create a little being to do work for us, we're going to make it look like us. So those are the little beings. But I've come to know them quite well, and they're really quite lovable. And I have written a lot about them. But then we began having other ones come through that would be on the motherships. And we had there was one real good case that I had, and I kept going down to Little Rock to have sessions with her at least once a month. And I would do 3 sessions in one day, and I got a lot of work done with her. And this is all in the book, The Custodians. It tells how this all gradually happened. And I know some of you may be looking very skeptical, but believe me, this began to happen. You found a way to contact them and let them answer the question. The person that thinks they had the experience are too frightened to really know what's going on, but they will tell you. And I was doing one where they were on a big ship, and there was a whole lot of different types, and so they were all communicating through me. And the one was a doctor. She said she was a doctor, but not as we consider a doctor. They worked with energy. And we were getting a lot of information, and I said, "Well, you know, we're going to have to stop for lunch. And we're going to be back in about 2 hours. Can I get you again so we can continue getting information?" She said, "Oh, yes, I'll be here." Now, this one was more humanoid. She had reddish hair. So they all are different. And I know we're going to questions. A lot of you are going to be very skeptical. Anyway, we went and had lunch, and we came back, and I put her under again, and I said, trying to get the same entity back. And it took a while for her to come back. And I said, "Well, it's been 2 hours, and we're back now, ready to continue." She said, "Oh, no, it's been a year. And I'm no longer where you left me. I'm on the other side of the galaxy." So this is when I began to find out time is not what we think it is. What took place in 2 hours for me was the whole year of her life. And that's what they keep saying, time doesn't exist anyway. They said time is an illusion. They said mankind is probably the only species in the universe has found a way to measure something that does not exist. So leave it to us to do that. So anyway, I began to get my information in that way. If I'd have the person on board the craft and they're scared, they're afraid, they don't know what's going to happen, I said, is there anyone there that can talk to me? And they'll say, yeah, there's one standing in the back behind the little graves like he's in charge. And he said he'll speak to you. And it's all done mentally. They don't speak word to word. And then I said, can you tell me? And he said, yes, we will talk to you. We know who you are. And all I had to do was ask the questions. And I feel now in my work, I've written 4 books on the UFO phenomena. I think I found the answers to any questions anybody would want to know. And believe me, in all of these years, 28 years now working in the UFO phenomena, I have never found a negative case. Never. It's always been positive. Because once you understand why it is happening, the fear goes away. The fear is generated by the emotion of the human mind. They said fear is the greatest emotion a human has. Don't understand something, they're going to be afraid of it. But if you understand what's going on and why it's happening, then the person, it doesn't affect them anymore. But you keep them in that fear. Fear is a very human emotion. Earth is very unique. There's a lot of things on Earth that are not found anywhere else in the universe. One of them is fear. Fear, it comes from Earth. The other species don't have it. Well, it's also the densest, heaviest planet in the universe. And they greatly admire you when you decide to come to Earth because it is so difficult to live here. So there's a lot of things that are very unique about it. I'll probably remember them as we go along. But this is a very unique planet, and they have been observing it since the beginning of creation of life on Earth. In my early books, that was what they told me. You must understand how life began on Earth. And they went back and told me how it, with the seeding of the planet and the development of the species. This is in my book, Keepers of the Garden is the main one that we go into all of that. And then it goes further in the Custodians, and it's repeated through a lot of my books. But you can imagine working with hundreds of people, and I'm getting the same information through each one. But there are councils over everything. Councils over solar systems, over Earths, over solar systems, councils over galaxies. And all of these councils have rules and regulations that they must abide by. No one is allowed to come into our space unless they're under these rules and regulations. So, one of the main rules, they are forbidden to harm a human being. Because after all, we are the grand experiment. And they've been watching us and developing us all this time. They're not allowed to harm. That's why when somebody comes up with a case where somebody thinks they've been harmed, look at Travis just explained. We find out it wasn't what they thought it was. We explained it to them, then it makes a lot of sense. And I know when I speak with UFO groups all over the world, and there's always, sometimes they'll start crying, and I said, what is it? And they said, finally it makes sense. They said, I've been terrified. But that was what Travis was telling me. He said he knows they were trying to help him. But look what they did in that movie. It was horrible. But they said, well, right before they was going to release it, Hollywood said, oh, we got to bring in the monsters and the horror and all of this stuff. But that is not what happens in these cases. Okay, one thing I want to bring up, the speakers, I have a little problem with some of the things they were saying. For instance, Antonio Paris was talking about taking how many years to get to the next planet out there that has life on it. That's going according to what we know of how long it takes us to travel, with how much gas you put in a motor to get the ship out there. That's human technology. They don't understand. These beings do not think the same way we do. It's not combustion engines. It's not how many miles a gallon it takes, how many years to go out there. That's not the way it works at all. A lot of the ships are powered by mind. And the individual mind of one, the small ones, the little grays, can power that whole small craft. But on the larger craft, it's a group mind. And the energy of the mind is stored in crystals on board the craft. And they can propel it with that. But when they're going through space, they said they have what is called cosmic rivers of energy. And all they do is tap into one of these rivers of energy and they go with the flow. They don't even have to use any power for the craft. It just follows the river and they can go where they want to go in space. A lot easier than what we've been led to believe. But there's a lot of other methods they use. They use vibrations and frequencies, and they go through dimensions. That's how they can be there just like that. Just like Star Trek, they'll say, engage, Mach 1. That's how it happens. They said, what they do, they raise the frequency and vibration of the ship to where it becomes invisible. And then it is into the next dimension that fast. A lot of investigators and people have talked about seeing a UFO in the sky, and they're watching, and then all of a sudden it disappears. Or they're watching, and all of a sudden one appears out of nowhere. They're going in and out of dimensions. This is how they do it. They raise the vibration of the ship to go. Yeah, they have to raise the vibration and vibration of the ship to go into the other dimension, and then they go so fast they disappear. Coming back, they have to lower it because we are the densest, heaviest planet in the universe. They lower the vibration to come into our dimension. Now, this has an effect on their body. This is also why they don't like to take humans on board the larger mother craft. There are mother crafts out there that are as big as cities. They're huge. That's where all the laboratory work is done. And the little grays have been developed to withstand the density and the pressure of Earth. And that's why you will never see them in big crafts. They're always in those smaller crafts. They're what I call the gophers. They're the interns in the hospitals. They're sent to pick up the people and bring them on board and do samplings. But if a person is brought on board, see, they have machines on board the ship that are much easier for them to work on people. They're constantly doing upgrades, trying to keep the body healthy. They're doing a lot of testing. They're very concerned about the increase in cancer and what the environments are doing to the body. So there is constantly testing of the body to see how the body is reacting and being affected. So sometimes it's done in the person's room, but other times they're taken on board the craft where they have machines, they can do this. They cannot keep you on board the craft very long because the human body can't take the difference in the pressure. We've heard of there's so many things going through my head right now. We've heard of some people seeing like Nordics appearing in their room. Those are not real, those are holographs, because they're one of the ones that can't withstand the density and the pressure. They will come into the room as a projection, a holograph, but the little grays can handle it. So if they take a person on board the craft, they have to raise the vibration just long enough for them to be on there, so they don't keep them on very long. Then they got to lower it when they bring them back. We've had many cases where the person wakes up and they said, oh, I got all these bruises all over my body. They must have taken me and beaten me up. What they don't understand, they said, is when they change the vibration of the body so you can exist on the craft just for that little period of time, it affects the whole body. And when they come back, they have to lower it to get you back here. Even the act of breathing will create bruises. So that's all it is just a reaction of the vibrations. They haven't done anything to harm anyone. Because I've heard so many cases of that. They said they wake up, they're paralyzed. That's because they have to readjust to this atmosphere when they come back in. I don't know if some of these ideas are strange to you, but in the beginning I didn't do a lot of talking about this at conferences because people didn't believe it. They think you're crazy. But I've had too many years now working with it, and I know how these beings work. And the majority of you, if you're in these programs, are being watched over. Your health is being constantly checked. They take care of their own people. That's what people don't understand. The ones in the program are their own people that volunteered to be here at this time. Now, they don't remember this consciously, but they are actually ETs, and a lot of you are. And when I give a lecture, they'll say, where are they? Where are they? Point them out, which ones are the ETs? I said, I don't know, because you don't even know. Because when you come to Earth, your memory is wiped out. But actually, many of you are volunteers that wanted to be here at this time as we go through the shift into the new Earth. And the energy you bring into this world can save the world, because it's actually raising the vibration of the entire world. So these are volunteers who have come. You know, Sherry talked a little bit about the volunteers. That's what she meant. You volunteered to be here at this time. So, in fact, I lost my point there. So you're actually, when you're done with your job here, you're going to go back to your other planet or your ship out there. So doesn't it make sense? They keep tabs on you. This is what a lot of the implants are. And in one of my sessions, they said, you must understand what the implants are all about. They're not negative. They put them up into the nostril because that's the closest to the brain. They are recording everything you see, and everything that happens to you goes into the data banks. Also, it's a monitor, so they'll know where you are. They said, if you're in trouble, we can be there that fast to help you, because they're keeping track of their own people. This is why everybody doesn't experience abductions. And they've been watching these people their whole life. And that's what some of these implants are. Other implants are put into the body to monitor the body and make sure it's healthy. They are constantly doing upgrades to keep the body healthy. I said they're concerned with disease. So that's all these implants are. And I know Dr. Lear was a very good friend of mine, Dr. Roger Lear, and he took a lot of these out. I've seen the ones they've taken out. And I told him, if they want you to have that in there, they're going to put it back. Because there was one case, a man said he'd never been sick in his life until they took them out. Some of them are like, you know, we used to have those contact pills, or time release pills. They're like that. They'll put them in the body, and it's a time release mechanism to like disperse medicine throughout the body to keep you healthy. But if you understand these things, it takes away the fear. It takes away all of this horror that's associated with it, because it's not there. I got so much we can talk about, but I've tended to do this as like an open forum if you want to ask questions, because I've got 28 years of work here, and there's so much information. So why don't we do that? Have Cherokee come in with the microphone. Is that okay? Because otherwise I can go in so many different directions. This is my interpreter, my translator.
Check 1, 2.
Because everywhere we go in the world, a lot of it's accents, and these microphones do reverberate. And she helps me, even in England, she has to help translate English. Because it's hard with all the accents. Mm-hmm. I may have opened up a big can of worms here, but this is what my work is involved. And I keep bringing people into these conferences to let you know it's real. That's one reason I've stuck to Lou's directive. He said all the time we've been doing this, he didn't want any government conspiracy, and he didn't want anything about aliens are here to take over the world. He didn't want any fear-based people, and that's why I've tried to stick to that. And I know there isn't any fear involved in this. They said one time, he said, I know people are always saying we're here to take over the world. They said, it's ours, it always has been. We can't do anything to you any worse than you do to yourself. So the idea is to get information and to educate people that it's a whole new world out here. There really is. And we're right in the middle of it right now. And it's wonderful. This is the most exciting time in history to be alive. So don't live in fear. There's a lot going on. Okay, let's see what we got here.
Dolores, yesterday, Greg Norrie was asked a question, do ghosts recognize ETs, and do ETs recognize ghosts? And maybe I'll rephrase that question to you. Do our higher selves, what's the relationship between ETs, higher selves, people out of body? What's that relationship?
There's 3 separate things. Your higher self, see, the ETs they're just beings just like us. They have souls, they have lives that they're living. You have all had lives on other planets. So that's just a life they live. So that's why there's all these different types. So that part is not hard to understand. So the higher self is what's over all of us. Whether you're a plant, a rock, an ET, or a human being. The higher self is over all. And you want to know about out-of-the-body experience. He asked about that, didn't he? Didn't you ask about out-of-the-body experience? The higher self. Oh, I thought the last question had to do with out-of-the-body. Yeah, in my classes, I go into a lot about the higher self because that's what we are. That's our connection to God, is our higher self. But the ETs are just a shell. I call it a suit of clothes that you wear. The real you is the higher self, your soul. And you're having lots of adventures along the way.
And it's aware of everything.
Yeah, it knows everything. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, it's a pleasure to talk to you, first of all. My question is, I have had a lot of sleep paralysis all through my life. And here recently, oh, excuse me, do I need to move?
Okay.
I started over here. Okay. Here recently, I didn't know what it was at the time, and looking back, it was most likely something along the lines of an orb, and it was kind of in my head. It was very strange, and I'm okay with it. My question actually relates to my daughter, who just within the last week, she just turned 6. She says she sees red sparkles, and they make pictures, and everybody thinks their children are special. I have 3, but my parents have said they've got 7 grandkids. They say that this kid is special. I got talked to by our teachers this last week and said, I just want you to know, your kid's got a fan club here. We all think she's special. So I know she's seeing something. I know that. I tell them they're fairies watching her because I don't want to scare her, but at the same time, I don't really know I guess my question is for advice. When you are seeing these things, how do you relate this to children so that you're not scaring them, but at the same time, I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
It could very well be spirits.
Well, and that's what I'm wondering.
Because
she also said she does see them.
everyone has a guide or guardian angel that is assigned to you when you're born.
Well,
and
she
they're
said
with
she sees
you.
a guy and she doesn't know sports. We don't do sports. With a helmet on, who looks like he's in gear. That's what she says she saw in her bedroom. And then she sees sparkles. And then they were putting up a birthday sign one time, and that. I mean, she went into a lot of detail. So I'm questioning, like, what do you say to her?
Well, you see, the ETs, your guides, all of that are very gentle with children. They're not going to show them anything that's going to frighten them. They'll make it to where it's something they can understand. So it makes sense they would make it like a deer.
No, not a deer.
What'd she say it was?
A person in gear.
In gear? I thought you said like a deer.
She said it was something like a, she doesn't know sports, but what she described was somebody in a football helmet, in a football gear.
Well, you know, your guide and guardian angel appears to you any way you want it to appear.
Okay.
And maybe that's how hers wants to appear to her.
So is it better to tell her what it is, or to tell, because at the time I said it was
Tell her
fairies
she
watching
has
her.
an angel that watches over her.
Okay.
And that hers decided to look like that. Because when I'm doing my workshops, I have a workshop where you get to meet your guide and guardian angel. And they can look like anything. It's just the way yours depends, is how it prefers to look. But everybody has one. You have one, it's assigned to you, and they're with you your whole entire life. You're never, ever alone. Okay.
Hi, Dolores. This is Sherry. And I spent a lot of time with you and Julia in 2012. Went to the conference, and then Quantum 1 and Quantum 2. And there was a lot that we talked about the new Earth. And I've been dying to get a hold of you since and see what you've seen, felt, heard from them, from your own intuition about how we're doing on the Ascension, you know, all that stuff.
Okay, because all my lectures, that's what we've been focusing on now. And I lecture all over the world. Okay, we are in the middle of the Ascension. People keep thinking it's going to happen somewhere down the road. And they keep saying, when's it going to happen? Like it's some big sudden thing and we're going to be there. It's not like that. Began about 2003 and it's a gradual process and we're in the middle of it.
How are we doing?
We're doing fine.
Are we on track? Are we?
We're right on schedule. And we were in China just before Christmas and they were telling us, they said, we know something is happening. We can see it. We can feel it. So they know, and if you really look around, you'll know something is going on. And it's positive, it's good. But you're in the middle of it now, and it's the most exciting time to be alive. Okay.
Hi, Dolores. I'm Sally from Fayette.
I don't want to go too much into that, because that takes a whole other lecture. Okay.
We'll listen. But anyway, I wanted to share with y'all that I don't remember which. I used to be a salesperson. They'd send me off to all sorts of stuff to learn how to sell. But the one thing I came back with, and one was fear is false evidence appearing real. And you know, we just got to work through it.
Fear is for entertainment purposes only.
Exactly.
And that's what they said.
And don't lose your sense of humor. But anyway, I have a question, is what's their home life like? I mean, like these are like explorers, or are they all ship, stars?
What's the
faring?
one?
What's their home life like?
I mean, do they eat? Do they have food? Do they have
This
humor?
is
Do
in
they
all,
have
it's in my
family?
books because I always want to know everything. I want to know
good. I
everything
will.
about them.
I will devour them, I promise you.
Many of them, though, live on board the craft, and they're generation craft. They just all live there. And some of them can't go home. Their home planets have been destroyed.
Wow.
But other ones go back and forth, and they talk about their home life and what their cities are like. And there are beings you would not even believe could possibly be alive. We're used to humanoid types, and they said that's the most common form in the universe is a humanoid type because it's very, it's useful. You know, 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso, and a head. But other planets and other universes, they're totally different. And I've written about some that look like octopuses and all kinds of strange forms. They said in some universes, the beings are triangle shaped. Or they're balls on top of balls. But they're alive, they're living creatures. Awesome. To me, that's exciting to explore that.
I love it.
And then to find out how they live. And I always want to know, how do you procreate? Do you eat? I want to know all those things.
Oh, I can't wait to read. And I had an implant removed in the late 80s in Hawaii. I think you answered the question, so I don't have to worry that they've lost me and I'm wandering around without my contact.
I didn't get that last part. What?
I'm just wandering around them not knowing where I am because I don't know where I am. I'm just right here.
What?
She had an implant removed in the late 80s. The
Who removed it?
The pyramid guide, Fred.
In Hawaii.
In Hawaii.
Anyway, she's wondering if now is she lost? Can they not find her because it's gone?
They'll put it back.
Okay.
If they want it there, they'll put it back, and they'll put it in a way you can't discover it.
Okay, I'm good. Enjoy it.
Because I've had cases like that where they'll say, we're going to put it this time where she can't get to it. You know? You don't want to be lost. Okay. Okay.
Hello, Doris. I have a question about your tape recordings that you've made of your sessions. I'm assuming that they're in a nice, safe place.
That they're what?
That they are in a safe place. And hopefully you're transcribing those old, cassette tapes into a digital format so that they'll be, preserved for a long time.
Well, it's not, I don't do videos, it's all just recordings.
She's saying,
A video.
She's just picking up a couple words.
Yeah, because that's what the problems with the microphones, yeah.
He's saying, I hope these recordings are in a nice, safe place and that they are being put into a digital format.
Well, see, in the beginning, when I was starting all of this, I was really worried people were going to find my recordings and find my discs. Then we were in these big discs, So I made several copies, and I had friends of mine hiding a lot of this because I was getting into some pretty complicated stuff. And I had 2 friends I trusted, and I gave them a whole set. I said, you keep them, and they put them in a closet. I had other ones. Now I don't do that anymore. But I wanted to make sure those recordings weren't lost. Those are the transcripts. But now we're into digital. But yeah, and they're in safe places because otherwise nobody's going to believe me if I didn't keep those recordings. And I don't know if we're putting, now it is digital recordings. I don't like the digital, I like the tape recorders.
And that's one of our projects right now is taking all the old tapes and getting them into digital format, yes.
But I don't trust it.
You see what I work with here?
Well, she had a hard time getting me to go over to digital. I was so used to tape recordings, and the tape recorder is clearer, I think. But a lot of my clients didn't have tape recorders anymore. And then the microphones, I couldn't get the mics, and I couldn't get the tapes. We found one place we could get tapes, and she said, you're going to have to come into the modern world. You're going to have to go to digital. I said, I don't trust that thing. So she got me a very simple one. She said, Mom, it's got 2 buttons. You can't go wrong.
And I have a follow-up question along with the with your documentation there. Have you authorized anybody to make studies of those recordings? in other words, a university, maybe somebody from MUFON, some organization that you trust to make studies of those tapes.
What are they going to study?
I don't know. I don't know.
It was funny. I used to send Lou, he was one of the safe places. I would send him recordings. And the one I had of the little Ray with that mechanical voice, I sent that to him and he phoned me and he said, "Boy, you sure know how to shake a person up. What was that?" So if they studied my recordings, they would see it is just about the same type of voice that comes through. And even in all of my work, some of my readers have said, it sounds like the same voice through everybody you work with, the same enunciation, the same phrases, the same tone of voice, and they don't understand that, but they use the same wording, and that's still happening. So I guess if they want to study it, that's what they'd find anyway.
See, my idea, if somebody else studies your works, your recordings and your documentation, that would lend more credibility to your work, okay, for the wider world audience.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know what they would study. That's what I mean.
Well, I don't know, but I'm
because I write about the information.
See, we're trying to get more documentation, more reality, more believability. Okay, and maybe that would enhance your work if you had somebody else looking at those recordings and listening to them and studying them. I don't know.
It's an idea.
It's an idea, I guess, but I don't really care about documentation anyway.
Right on.
I just do my work.
Thank you.
Because we have miracle healings now in the way I'm doing the hypnosis, and they'll say you need to have doctor statements and all of that. And I said, that's not the way I work. I don't care if they believe it or not. I know it's real, and the client knows it's real. I'm not out to prove it to anybody. Besides, if a skeptic, no amount of proof will ever be enough. And a believer doesn't need any proof. Okay.
Thank you again for a wonderful conference, as usual. My question is, and it can be to anyone, I was traveling through Tatum, New Mexico, December 22nd, 2012, and I saw dropping from the sky turquoise neon. It looked like fish, but just the shape of a fish going, or a torpedo, dropping down. They didn't splatter, and they went through into the earth. If anyone else has seen anything like that. And there was also an orb accompanying them, kind of running around while they were dropping from somewhere. It was so dark, it was like 2:30 in the morning, so I didn't see anything up. But they just dropped down, and they were just neon turquoise. So if anybody else has seen those, it was pretty awesome. It was beautiful.
It sounds great.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. But you were talking about December 21st, 2012.
22nd.
Well, the 21st, we were in London.
Yes.
And we were doing a London premiere. And we said, the rest of you can stay home with your heads under the covers. We're going to party. And we had a London party. The world, you may think the world is ending, but we're having a party in London.
I had been in Arizona at the Star Knowledge Conference with the Native American Gathering. I was heading back to Lubbock, going towards, Texas. And anyway, it was pretty
Okay.
Morning, Dolores. You're probably not going to like me for my introduction. First of all, I'm the chief investigator for MUFON.
That's why I was hoping I didn't hurt any feelings, but
Yeah, no, not at all.
they hurt my feelings a lot in
I
the
gathered
beginning.
that. I gathered that, and that's why I'm up here, is I want to see if I can remedy that. Okay, but I'm the chief investigator for the state of Arkansas, so I'm your neighbor. Second of all, by training, I'm a scientist. So, but please reserve your judgment, because I, as chief investigator, I have a number of ongoing cases with people that can use any help they can get. They're disturbed about what happened to them. And I think science, being trained as a scientist, I think scientists, I think there's a middle ground between the skeptic and the believer. I call it an agnostic, because I don't know about everybody else here, but I know about this much. So there are lots of things we don't know.
See, that's what my work is. I'm a therapist, and I have to work with these people.
Yeah.
And a lot of the other hypnotists that are doing this, they're causing more harm than good, because they don't know how to handle these kind of cases.
I would never argue with that. So, but what I'm asking in the question is that if you would be willing to, at least in Arkansas, because I have some influence, come back to working with MUFON.
I don't think so.
No?
No, I mean,
Well, how
I'm
about
sorry,
them?
but it left a bad taste in
I
my mouth
understand.
for many, many years.
How about me personally?
What about what?
Talk privately, okay?
But,
Because
you know, I don't want you to take it personally, but it went on for years.
I understand.
And it was really bad ridicule.
I understand.
And when you're doing a case and you've got a person under and they're sitting there making snide remarks while the person is in trance, I said, no, I cannot put my clients through that.
Well,
That's not good. That's not good investigation.
Of course it's not, and I agree with you, 100% it's not. Because, especially for the people that are going through this, you use any help you can get, and I would like to have that help personally.
Just asking for help.
That's all I have to say. So if you want to consider it, get in contact
Wouldn't
with
be
me.
the same scrutiny like it was before.
Okay, not like the other time. Well, you'd have to see if you could get through to my office, because we're... Because, sir, I don't even answer the phone.
But it's a matter of helping.
Well, it may be able to work it out, but we get thousands of emails, we get tons of phone calls, and that's why my staff answers the phone. So it'd just be a matter of getting through, and if you do, remind me of who you are. You know, because otherwise, I see hundreds of people. But if you have specific questions, I might be able to help you, but otherwise, we're into so many other projects now. Okay, but I could help you if I knew you were sincere about it. I could help you. Okay. Never say never. Okay. Okay.
You're very kind. My question, when I came here to this conference, I was hoping that one of the speakers might talk about doppelgangers.
About what?
Doppelgangers.
Oh, you don't know what that is?
I know, I was wondering, I hadn't heard anyone speaking about it. I was wondering if you could address that.
A doppelganger is a double. Right. Everybody has a double somewhere in the world. And it's supposed to be someone, but look at all the possibilities of facial form. You know, soon somewhere out there is going to be somebody who looks just like you. And that's what I've heard is a doppelganger is just somebody who looks like you. And the odds are you coming across this other double are very, very rare. I saw one that I thought was me one time, but I was on a bus and she was in a store and I could see her through the store window. And it was really weird because I said, she looks just like me, even dressed like me. But the odds of actually meeting this doppelganger are pretty rare. But everybody's got a double out there somewhere.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have the ETs told you, and if not, would you please ask them, about the new portals being open to Earth and the subdimensional beings coming through those portals?
It's not new. They've been using them for eons.
They're saying there's some new ones.
There's some new ones.
Well, they have portals that are in definite places. This is one of the way they travel. I told you they go through dimensions, but also they have portals that they can go through. They have windows. Windows can be looked through into another dimension, another time, but a portal is when you actually can move through it. Humans can't do it.
Would you ask them about the subdimensional beings that will not abide by the rules?
Subdimensional beings that will not abide by the rules.
I don't know what you mean.
Would you ask them about it? So
Well,
if you have, or would
if they find somebody who's not obeying the rules, they get them out of here. They police the planet.
Mm-hmm.
But I know there are portals. There are portals everywhere. But humans are not allowed near them, because if we tried to go near them, our matrix of our body would be destroyed. So they don't want you near them, because you can't go through a portal unless your vibration matches the vibration of the portal. That's how they use them, but humans haven't got to that point yet.
Had the ETs talked about the call out for that we need more than 24 guardians because of these new portals?
For what?
ET's calling out that we need more than 24 guardians because of these new portals. This is all.
I've never heard any of this.
Would you
they
ask
have
them,
one
please?
guardian at each portal. That's
Yes,
to
I know.
keep humans away from the portal.
Apparently she's saying somebody said they put a call out for more guardians because they have more portals.
One is enough.
No,
Yeah.
because
Would
they
you
have
would you
more
ask them about the
It's still
if there
just-
are new portals, please?
I don't
So
see.
She just wants you to ask.
Okay,
Just
but what
ask.
I've found is the portals, they're the ones they use.
Yes.
I don't know why they would need new ones.
They aren't being used by ETs.
Well, they're being used for the wrong reason. They won't be allowed anyway.
Y'all right here?
Okay.
Hello, beautiful beings. On my question, oops.
Well, you got a whole list there or what?
Just in case I felt nervous and fumbled, mumbled. Dolores, you mentioned you can get the answer to anything and you like learning about everything. Me too. My question is, what is the truth about human sexuality? Are we meant to team up in little teams of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6? What
Where
is
do you
the
want to
potential
start?
of human sexuality?
Where do you want to start? Sexuality?
Anything you can, anything.
The
Any
ETs think
insights?
we're very funny, I'll tell you that. The ETs think we're very funny because 3 things they find as amusing about humans. One is that a way we procreate. They think it's extremely hilarious. And what's the other one? The fact that we consume food, because they don't eat like we do. Very few have planets that they have to eat. The majority of them live off of light, and they absorb light through their body. This is why the ETs are closer to God than we will ever be. Because I asked them one time, well, where does the light come from? And they said it comes from the source. And if they're on board a craft, they have a place where they have to go to get light baths, because they live off of light. Humans, see, we are related to the animals. That's why we still have to eat and consume, and we have sexuality. But they don't have sexuality on a lot of these other planets. Most of them are androgynous. That means, you know, hermaphrodite, where they're either no sex or one sex, or both in one body. Humans are different. We were created that way, but we're getting away from it as we get into the new earth. The third thing they find is amusing about us is that we die. They don't die till they're ready to die. So they really think the humans are really amusing to watch us and our antics anyway. But you go back to sexuality, it's based on the fact that we evolved from animals. Okay. Does that make sense?
Okay. And then I just was wondering, is there a bigger potential that we could use human sexuality for? Are we missing out on something, or is it potentially being abused or misused sexual energy?
Well, you're going to abuse anything. You're going to abuse anything.
Is there potential that it's being abused?
I don't know, is it being abused? I don't know that it is. It may be in your mind, but no, it's as long as you got human beings, you know, they're just made that way. But it's our animal nature, and that's why they said until we get away from our animal nature, we're not going to be able to travel in space, we're not going to be able to do what they do, because we haven't evolved enough yet.
Okay, but yeah,
They're
like,
afraid of
tantric
us.
teachings. I just think there's more to human sexuality. Just wondering if you've heard more. Okay, well,
Yep.
you've answered.
But they're afraid of us. They're afraid of our violence. And we're not going to be able to travel with them until we get over all of this. But we're making headway. They said there's hope for us. There's promise. Okay.
Dolores, out of appreciation for all your work, research, dedication, putting them in the books, putting them out in the public, and letting us read them, I took a picture from Billy Meyer's photograph of a Palladian ship.
Yeah.
Had a young girl that I know, not really, but I know her dad. And she did a portrait of that Palladian ship, and we got it done, framed, and we'd like to give it to you.
Oh. Okay.
Out of love.
Is it the ship they call the wedding cake?
I don't think it's that one.
There's one they call the wedding cake that
Yes.
was seen a lot because of the
didn't
way
do
it
that
was designed. It's a good thing I'm not going on a plane. People give me stuff all over the world, and I got to take them on planes.
Well, yeah, we love you.
Oh. That's beautiful.
Go ahead and turn it around so everybody
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
And that is the Billy Meyer, one of the ships, too. It is.
Well, it's impossible to follow that up there. Yeah.
You don't have a gift?
Just
Now where do I put it? In my office I do my sessions, or in our company office, or in my house?
take
What?
it
I'll
for
find
ya.
a place. Okay. Thank you.
My question is, first
Thank
of all,
you very much. Okay. Tell them I really appreciate it. Yeah?
I feel at home with you guys here. I feel, even though I don't know each one of you, I feel like it's a big family here. So, yeah. So this is a kind of an odd experience, and it's more of a memory. I talked to my brother about it, and we're pretty close, and I'll be as brief as possible, but we've been interested in spirituality and ufology stuff throughout our life, but I was curious if you had ever talked to anybody who had an experience where I have a memory that he and I knew each other before this life, and that we discussed actually coming here. And I remember this sounds really odd, but I remember going through a really bright light before agreeing to come here to Earth. And
We've never heard this before at all.
Never? Really? It's common? It's just...
That's sarcastic.
Okay,
If you don't know my
okay,
sarcasm.
Right, okay. So it's just, is that possible that he and I, have known each other before this
No.
life? Right.
I'm sorry, I'm not making fun of you, but everybody knows.
You're good.
Yeah,
You're
this is
good.
what you know my work, you know this is what I do.
Okay. I'll read the books. Thank you.
I think I was on YouTube and I saw it when you were talking about Atlantis, and so I'm just drawn in. I'm watching all of your videos back to back, that people were able to post under your page, your YouTube channel, and I got hooked on it. And I started buying the Convoluted Universes. So I own about 9 of your books to just speed things
You
forward.
see, when I was doing the UFO stuff, they were giving me all this information.
Yes, ma'am.
They began to go off in complicated metaphysical and theories and concepts. So I said, I know there's got to be another book. I'm going to have to go in another series. And that's what started the Convoluted Universe series.
I got all the way to
They got away from UFOs into this other thing.
to the fourth one. And in the fourth one, because I studied as a minister and things like this, and those are those areas that a lot of people in ministry don't want to touch, and I'm steady asking questions like, okay, what's that? What's going on here, and what the Psalms talking about here? And so that's when I leaned towards your books. And Convoluted 4, even the way you finish, I'm like, okay, so what's next? And I believe I even call your office, and
each book gets more complicated.
Yes, ma'am, it is. And
And
at the end of the book,
I said those are for books for people who want their minds bent like pretzels.
It did that. It did that, and I had to buy New Earth. And so you're talking about twisting a person's mind. You're saying, okay, this person comes in the middle of your life, and okay, this person, another spirit took the embodiment of. So yeah, so I'm here. I'm here now, to ask you, what's next? Because I hadn't been on your channel. I'm a junkie. I got to find out what's next because people are asking these questions, and I'm like a life coach. And even just the epitome of what you do. You weren't afraid to get outside of the norm. You weren't afraid to be that person that says, you know what? No one knows what's going on, but I'm going to do it. And I see everybody in this audience, we all really, even if we won't ask the question, what am I to do? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to do in life?
And I hear this every day in my office.
So I wanted to say, even the 3-wave, we're talking about the whole 3 ways, and most of us are somewhat attached to that in part. Is there going to be anything coming that you're going to do book-wise or movie-wise? I saw you had something about that movie. I'm bad with names, but I saw something like that on YouTube, and I wanted to see what's next so I could, write it down, get some information on that.
What's next?
If you can speak on it right now.
Okay, because I got 17 books, and I'm working on 3 more.
Okay.
I never work on just one at a time. One is finished, and I think we're having to have it ready to go to the printers very soon. You said it'll be out summer because it's already set to go into the distributor's catalog. That's not a Convoluted 5, because that I'm also working on. But I make that plain. When I came out with the 3 waves, they thought that was another Convoluted book, but there's other books out there. This book we call The Search for, I can't remember the name, The Search for Hidden Sacred Knowledge. And it's cases that I've had over many years of people who went back in time periods where they had great knowledge that was lost and taken away from us. So that's the next book that's coming out. And I'm about halfway through Convoluted 5, and I'm still getting more information on that. Every time I think I've got everything, at the end of Convoluted 3, I said, oh, well, now you've told me everything there is to know. There's nothing else left for you to tell me. And they said, oh, no. There's more. There's a lot more. And then immediately I began to get information that went into Convoluted 4. And now Convoluted 5 is even expanding on that. So I like that, because the information I'm getting now, 30 years ago, I could never have understood. So we grow, we evolve. And you come up with an idea I never heard of, and I think, wow, if I've never heard about it, maybe nobody else has. I have great curiosity, that's the problem. Okay. Anyway, there's more books coming. Okay.
I guess my question was, if all reality or most of our reality is a hologram or a projection, when it comes to duality and ascension, is the negative things in our world and I guess the reptilians and the, secret government and see just the whole negative perspective. Is it a hologram that we are projecting that we need to stop projecting, or is it an actual reality that us as a humanity have to face and have to rise above?
Understand that?
Why don't you answer it? Okay. Everything is a hologram anyway, so that's the thing.
That's what she's saying.
That was what they said. Everything is an illusion. Life is an illusion. Life is a game. Life is a play. You get caught up in it. But go ahead.
No, and that's where you're going with that. You answered your own question within your question. If it's all an illusion, what? So if it's all an illusion, you have created your illusion, correct? That's pretty standard accepted fact now, that we create our reality. Would we say that's true?
When I started out, nobody knew what I was talking about. But
So if you have conspiracy and negative things and negative creatures and things like that in your reality, what does that tell you? I mean, you have created that, so that's something that you are needing to work on. One, it may be that you're dealing with your own demons. Oh, okay. And as you become aware that you are doing this, then you will see it shift because you are taking control of your own creation at that point. Mm-hmm. It's just part of the learning process. And
but everything,
thank you.
Everything is an illusion. In fact, this might bend a couple of minds. According to them, this auditorium did not exist before you collectively decided to come here. And when we leave, it disappears. So wrap your brain around that. Okay.
It continues for Randy because he works here.
Oh, okay, yeah, it continues for him. Okay. That gives you an idea how everything is created instantly, piece by piece.
Hi, Dolores. I'm a newer fan. I just started reading The Convoluted Universe, Part 1. But my question has more to do with, I'm curious about animals and their source, where they're...
About what?
Animals and their source.
Their soul and their energy, if it's more primitive or if it's, I don't know, I have no idea. It's kind of
You have been an animal.
Okay. Yeah, do we go into animals in our past lives, or, I mean, what is...
It's the same soul.
Okay. Oh.
In the evolution to get to a human, you have to go through all the steps. You got to be everything before you become a human. It's the same soul, experience life in different forms. So like you've been a rock, you've been air, you've been a plant, you've been an animal.
You've been an ET?
You've been an ET, and now you're in a human body. I call it a suit of clothes. It's a costume you're wearing to play this part. But at one time, you were an animal. So an animal has a soul. It's real.
Okay.
So you just look at an animal's eyes, you can see there's a soul in there.
But they're just not as, is it more, they're just not as aware?
Oh, they're smarter than you think they are.
Okay, I don't know. That's why
They're more aware than we are.
There's a whole section in one of the convoluted books about life in other forms. And we'll be taking people back, instead of going to a past life as a human, they went to a past life when they were different animals. And you give me something like that, I got such a curiosity. I want to know, what does that animal think? How does it see? How does it operate? So it's not just a passing thing, oh, I was a dog or a cat. I want to know, or I was a spider. I want to know what that spider feels. How does it see? So I ask tons of questions when I get somebody in a life like that. But it's a soul in there.
So
same soul that you have.
Are you saying that's what we go through first before we become a human form?
Are you saying that's what we go through first before we come into human?
If you want to go with linear, they keep saying there is no such thing. It's all happening. It's simultaneous anyway, but I like to think of it as linear, that you have to go through that. It makes sense before you can get to a human. But when they first began coming up with this concept of simultaneous time, I said, how can this all be happening at the same time? How can you be a baby and then be a child and then be a teenager and an adult? They said, that's because you're using the wrong word. It's not happening at the same time, it's existing at the same time, which doesn't make it any clearer.
Just makes your mind, whew. Yeah, like you said, bend your mind
But
like a pretzel.
everything that's alive, is that plant, that's real or that's fake? Okay. Anyway, everything that's alive has a soul.
Okay, thank you
It's
very
just
much.
experiencing that for a little while.
Are there any like primitive humans? So like, you know, there's obviously tribes and things like that in Amazon. Are they at all, like, do aliens visit them, or
Are they at all, one word in there.
do the aliens visit like the primitive tribes of like Amazon, or like, you know, because
For
they're
what?
so stuck in
Wondering
time?
about the primitive tribes, do the aliens visit them as well as?
I've got stories of them in my books.
Okay, yeah, I have a lot of catching up to do. Thanks, Dolores.
Okay.
Hi, Dolores. I was flying over the Rockies, going to California, and we were flying low enough that I could look down and I could see the valleys, and in these valleys were huge circles, but just a circle, no shapes like, you know, they showed us, but there's no roads leading to any of these. So is somebody using these circles? I mean, is it like an underground thing, or do you know of these, or? But there's lots of them out there.
These aren't the ones that are in the fields over
No,
Colorado.
When we're
things
flying,
like that,
we
right?
say, what are all those circles out there?
Yeah, we're wondering the same things.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was just wondering if you knew.
If anybody knows, yeah, we keep wondering that too. What are all these circles? I mean, some of them are crops, right? Yeah, that's what I was saying. And some parts it's irrigation stuff, but like if it's just are you talking it's a solo circle?
Yeah,
or
they're like two, maybe, two huge.
Yeah,
they
sometimes.
kind of as big as this room.
So it may be the same thing, but if you're not from that, it looks really alien if you're not from that
Yeah,
area.
because we'd be flying
It
over a
looks weird.
field and we see all these circles and we said, what are those supposed to be? We asked the stewardess and they don't even know, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm
whether
just
it's
so
natural or
curious
it could
what
be a crop or something.
These circles, are they maybe missile sites that were?
They're messages. You're not getting it? They're messages.
You wait till you fly
The
over the
messages.
outback in Australia. That looks like another planet.
Oh, I'm sure. Thank you very much.
Okay. It's like nothing on Earth. So there's a lot of stuff out there you see from the air that you can't see from the ground. Okay, these are the last two because we're right now at the time to stop. Okay, go ahead.
Dolores, I have a daughter who has a security system. She put into her house, and at night she has orbs all over her house. It's motion censored. What are these orbs?
Is the security picking them up?
Yes.
Okay, so it's setting them off?
Yes.
Okay.
Orbs is just energy.
You know what she did? She took a bubble machine that she had for her young daughter, spread it out. The orbs went after the bubbles. She said it looks like it's raining.
Well, you don't know how many pictures people have sent us of orbs. One person, they bring a conference like this, they'll bring a whole album of orbs, pictures of them. But we found out it's energy.
What?
Just energy. A fun thing to do is taking pictures. When a lot of people do, they're really prevalent in areas where there's celebrations going on. So it's happy energy, and you'll find a lot of them. But you'll see them in different places.
Well, when she was young, she was able to see people, ghosts. She said they would come to her and she'd have to get out of the covers, but she said they'd come and look at me at night, Mom. So I just wondered if maybe the orbs had something to do with her.
It's good energy is all it is. Okay. There's parts in my books we talk about orbs, where you can be an orb if you have to. That's another form of life.
Hi, Dolores.
Okay.
Thank you for another fantabulous year, and this is for you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dolores. Happy birthday to you.
Okay.
Amen.
days ahead, but I'll take it. Thank you. It's really the 15th, but you're pretty close.
Well, I know, but we're not going to be here on the 15th. We're going
Thank
to be
you.
watching the eclipse.
Well, I really hope that you all enjoyed yourself and you had a nice time at the conference.
Thank you.
Okay.
Till next year.
And safe journeys home.